So when divers who spend a lot of time underwater were asked about the creepiest and most unexplainable things they have seen in the depths, these were the stories they shared on Reddit. Some of the stories may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I dive myself, but this story is actually from my grandfather, who is a dive master. He and my grandma went diving in Cancun for a vacation. With both of them being dive masters, they knew what they were doing. The lead of the dive group caught on and had them help out some of the new divers with clearing their ears or getting the weight belts set to the right weight. Well, my grandfather got a 20-something-year-old girl who had just got her diver certification. They had planned on diving off a drop-off. If you don't know what a drop-off is, it is when it goes from a 40-foot-long reef to a cliff that God only knows how far down. Well, they swam over the reef and on the last part of that particular dive, went over the cliff to see what was on the wall. The young girl that my grandfather was helping, which by the way was certified to dive no more than 60 feet, rapidly started taking a nosedive down the wall. 50, 60, 70, 80 feet down the wall. My grandfather and the dive lead tried to grab her and chased her down to 120 feet. That was the limit they could safely go with the amount of air they had. So they had to watch her continue down and down until they couldn't see her anymore. She never came back up and no one knew why she did it. It shook up the whole dive group, especially my grandfather, as he felt responsible for not stopping her in time. I had a dive master that told me once he was diving somewhere and found a full skeleton wearing diving gear with the air on the tank turned off pretty deep down. If I remember correctly, they said they reported it to the police and it was found out that the man's wife turned off the air while they were on a dive to murder him. I have done a number of dives and the strangest thing I have ever seen was a large deep freezer with a heavy industrial chain wrapped around multiple times with about 5 cinder blocks attached. We logged the GPS and depth coordinates and notified the police. We were eventually able to find out what was inside. It was 10 porcelain dolls. About 3 years ago, my boyfriend and I went on an unguided dive in Egypt. We both knew the dive site from previous trips and felt pretty comfortable to go alone. It's not a very difficult one and we didn't want to hold up a group in case my boyfriend wanted to take some pictures, which can take a while. One of the perks of this particular dive site was a single coral at 38 meters with a 90% chance to find a long-nosed hawkfish, a really cute guy. Please Google it. The normal procedure would be to spend most of your dive at 25 meters and then make a quick stop at 38 to check for the hawkfish and make your way up again. This should usually take you only 5 minutes or something. However, we didn't find him and wasted quite a lot of time looking. At this point, I was getting kind of sleepy. In retrospect, this was the first sign that something was going horribly wrong. I just wanted to finish the dive so I could take a nap on the boat. I basically dragged my boyfriend away from the coral and we are about to make our way up again until I noticed something. Hidden between one of the rocks was the strangest looking octopus I have ever seen. It was bright red. You cannot see the red color that deep underwater. It's physically impossible. Not only that, it had super weird silvery eyes. All in all, it looked super funny and we were both laughing at its stupid face. My boyfriend takes quite a few pictures until his computer goes absolute crazy and basically forces us to slowly ascend and make 3D compression stops along the way. That finally snapped us out of it because we did not intend to make a decompression stop, let alone 3. We finally reached the surface with only 20 bars left in our oxygen tanks. A huge no-go. You should always have at least 50 on reserve. So at that time, we were still absolutely blown away by that strange octopus. We have never seen something like this before, so we changed our equipment as soon as possible so we could look at the pictures. Except when we go through the pictures, there's nothing. Just 20 plus pictures of one single rock. No octopus or anything inside. The rock wasn't even a strange color, and that's when it dawned on us. The depth, the time, and our strange behavior underwater. That sounded a lot like nitrogen poisoning. You should know the longer you spend at great depths, the more likely nitrogen poisoning becomes. It's basically an aesthetic that first makes you high and delirious until you pass out. And underwater is basically the worst place to pass out ever. So here we were at 38 meters giggling at a rock without a care in the world, basically tripping on nitrogen with our oxygen running dangerously low. I'm pretty sure if it weren't for our computer, we would have passed out and died. Though we still can't explain how we both saw exactly the same thing. I'm a commercial diver and was once on a job cleaning a portable water reservoir. I had been in other reservoirs before, but this was by far the biggest at 40 by 80 meters. To get you in, you had to open a hatch in the ground. The whole reservoir was underground, so I had to climb down a ladder. The hatch was in a corner, so when you were in the far corner of the reservoir, it was completely pitch black, and you just had to hope your light didn't go out. I was about halfway through a 3-hour dive when the batteries in my torch started going flat. I watched the beam get narrower and dimmer until it cut out completely. It's not a huge problem if you lose sight, as you can follow the cord back to the hatch. So just as I started walking back, some obnoxiously loud banging started somewhere in the reservoir. I was the only diver in there, so it both confused and scared me. Needless to say, I ran back to the hatch as fast as I could. I ended up getting my torch changed out and doing another hour in the water, but didn't hear the noise again. I still have no idea what it was, but the combination of my torch going out and loud banging coming from somewhere gave me a hell of a fright. You can dive in man-made lakes and check out what's left of the old, flooded homes and communities. It's pretty dark and spooky down there no matter what, especially when you think of all the big fish swimming around that are barely silhouettes until they are close. My buddy likes to dive in lakes. He said the creepiest thing by far is finding cemeteries over 100 feet beneath the water in dark and eerie quiet. So one time, I asked him about the big fish. He said there are definitely bigger creatures down there than he had ever expected. But despite their size, they are all attracted to lights and noise. So he recommends it's better and safer that you watch from a distance, which would still be pretty disconcerting, just dark 2D shapes drifting nearby. I have done 150 plus dives, but can't say I have seen anything all that creepy. But I do have a cool dive story to share. I was diving the blue hole in Belize and we were at max depth, which is 120 feet. It gets weird at that depth. The light level is getting pretty low and it feels oppressive. You realize you are way down. There are some lemon sharks that swim around the blue hole. They are curious and like to check out divers, but they are harmless. They look mean as hell though and can get 8 to 9 feet long easily. At 120 feet, one of them decided to come and check me out and my now ex-wife. She was a bit in front of me, but when she saw the shark beelining towards us, she quickly swam behind me and shoved me towards the shark. I was not expecting that and it took me a minute to process what happened, but I felt bad for her more than anything. She was terrified for a few seconds. I laughed about it later and said at least I knew where I stood with her. She is a good diver, but the sight of that 8-foot-long shark swimming straight at her with the mouth full of teeth triggered her survival instincts. I didn't hold it against her. As I got shoved towards the shark, who was at that point only about 6 feet away from me, he calmly turned to the side and glided right past me and then went on to check out some other divers. We started our ascent and I didn't see him again. It was a cool experience. Not a personal story, but one about the lake near where I live. The lake near my home is man-made, except instead of flooding a plain or clear-cut forest, They just flooded a dense patch of woods surrounding the river, trees, and anything else that was there. A combination of this and the wildly unpredictable terrain has led to hundreds of drownings and subsequent deaths due to sudden drop-offs or people getting trapped underwater. The Army Corps of Engineers refuse to dive in the lake because they have labeled it too dangerous, meaning most of the bodies are still down there somewhere. There are also some local rumors that amongst the forest trees are buildings and homes long since flooded and forgotten. Not me, but my dad used to do a bunch of diving around some lakes in Minnesota, but his favorite was diving in the all-iron mine pits around Crosby. These lakes are almost always glass clear and exceptionally deep compared to the natural lakes. After a certain depth, there's a layer of silt, I think just decomposed matter, that lays flat and blocks out the little bit of light that gets into it. There was this one pit that my dad went diving into that had these steps leading into a cavern, being at the right depth for the silt to gather, making a very ominous looking stairway to nothing, thus being dubbed the Stairway to Hell. When my dad was in grad school, he did some field study classes, some of which involved diving in Monterey Bay. One day he was diving and found a shopping cart with bricks and cinder blocks along with a chain attached to the handle. He naturally followed the chain and found a bare foot wrapped in the chain. He assumed something probably ate the rest of the body. There is an old World War II ammunition ship off the south coast of England. It used to be full of brass shells. Over the years, most had been taken by divers, and now it's very rare to see them, apart from a pile in one corner of the ship. For some unknown reason, this pile of shiny brass metals was miraculously untouched and remarkably clean after spending years underwater. Only if you swam near it, you could see it. So my friends and I decided to check it out, and that's when we came across it. Out of the murky darkness, the largest eel I have ever seen snaking forward. Without exaggeration, this thing had a head the same size as a horse's head, full of jagged teeth. I could not see the body as it looped into the dark and deeper into the ship. No one got near those shells. Everybody swam as fast as humanly possible away from it. Turns out for years this thing had been guarding the shiny brass shells, slithering over them, making them shine. We found out at a bar later that he was famous in the area and many people go to the wreck just to see him. Though no idea why this giant creature was guarding them like a dragon and its horde. But some said eels are like magpies and like shiny things. Not a diver, but when I was surfing New Zealand's West Coast beach, I felt something wrap around my leg. So I quickly looked down, and it was a fishing line. So I tried to pull it up, but then the line got heavy. I assumed it was a big fish, but as I pulled the line closer, it got even heavier. So much so I began to sink. So hastily, I hopped on my board and paddled closer to shore. Not long after, I slid off my board and was in chest-deep water. My friend came over because he noticed something was wrong. I told him about the ordeal. Then we both pulled the fishing line in and saw a large silhouette in the water. So we dragged it to the surface, and it was a dead body. Apparently, someone rock fishing had fell off the rocks into the water and gone missing. There was a hook stabbed to his neck and the fishing line wrapped around his face and dug into his skin. We brought the dude's body to the shore and called in the lifeguards. Then literally threw up because the man's eyes were missing. So 3 days ago I went snorkeling off Nemba Island in Zanzibar. Everything went normal and we start heading back. I grabbed my net bag and put my black fins, black mask, snorkel and black wetsuit inside. Once back ashore, I grab my bag, jump off the boat and head to the rental office to return the equipment. At that point, I feel my bag is moving somehow. At first, it seemed like a flat black worm squirming quickly. After rotating the bag, I realized I was looking only at the tail of an otherwise 1 meter long black sea snake. one of the most venomous reptiles I could find, trying to get out of the net. How it got there, I have no freaking clue. Alright, with that creepy ending, we have got to the end of this story compilation. This video was a bit different from what I usually make, so let me know if you guys like this type of videos as well, so I could make more. If you like dark and horror storytelling videos like this one, you could consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and with another story or story compilation, I'll see you guys soon. Until then, stay safe out there and goodbye.